Oh. Oh yeah. Afterburner. Vector Man. Ah! Mmm. You are not a Sega game. Evil Dead. Hail. To the King.
Come get some. Who's laughing now, huh?
No. Mm-mm. No. No. Ah. Oh. Oh shit.
Now I'm playing with power!
That's Nintendo! Seriously? What can I possibly say about The Evil Dead that hasn't been said countless times before? It's one of the best horror films ever made, spawning two sequels, Dead by Dawn in 1987 and Army of Darkness in 1992. These movies are gory, goofy, and entertaining as fuck. Needless to say, I'm a huge fan. So much so that I tracked down a bootleg copy of Within the Woods, Sam Raimi's original Super 8 short that inspired the first, long before the advent of YouTube. I even met Ash himself, along with Scott, Linda, Cheryl, and Shelley. You gotta love Bruce Campbell's signature. It's essentially a chicken scratch. Compare that to Tom Sullivan, the artist responsible for designing the book and all the illustrations within. I mean, look at that. Fucking awesome. After the epic finale that was Army of Darkness, fans were aching for a follow-up. When Hail to the King was first announced for Sony's PlayStation and Sega Dreamcast, I was ecstatic. Bruce Campbell was set to reprise his breakout role, and it was said to be a survival horror game. That's right, I'm talking about Resident Evil. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're like, gee, really? What else is new? I should just rechristen this show, calling it 6 Degrees of Resident Evil. That or turn it into a horror drinking game. Now, before I start bitching, I should talk about the story, so here's the juice.
Let's go. It all started with that damn book.
Heard it?
It got into my hand and it went bad.
Heard it? There we go.
Even got my old job back. Not to mention, I met a great gal. Jenny, assistant manager, arts and crafts. We were the perfect match. But then, the nightmares came. For years, they haunted me, even when I was awake. Jenny thought I was crazy, but she agreed to help. We decided to go back to the cabin, back to where it all started. She said it would be good to face my fears. Big mistake.
The story disappointed many fans, for it feels less like a continuation and more like a greatest hits compilation of all the best moments from the series. This did upset me back in the day, though not so much now. It's silly, fun, and totally believable in this wacky universe. Really, think about it for a minute. Evil Dead 2 was sold as a sequel, but it's clearly a remake. The filmmakers claim the first few minutes is simply a recap, and that new footage begins with the evil force taking Ash through the woods. If that's the case, where the fuck were Cheryl, Shelley, and Scott in your little recap? That's bullshit, Sam. It's a fucking remake. Just accept it.
Press the friggin' start button, would ya?
Okay, now the gameplay. In a nutshell, it's Resident Evil. Pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D characters and objects, tank controls, even those bottomless interconnected storage chests. Yeah, it's Resident Evil. You'll guide Ash through a series of locations inspired by the films, like the infamous cabin, the surrounding woods, a Wolverine Scout campsite, some hillbilly hellhole, an old church, and so on. Later, Ash is sent back in time to Damascus, where you'll get to explore a few castles, housing quarters, and some creepy-ass dungeons. The Evil Dead assume many forms here. We have legless deadites, skeletons, skullbats, deadite pigs, Wolverine Scouts. Whoa, I'm slicing up undead children in a video game.
You little sucker.
Wow. Then we have all the skeleton guards, nether beast familiars, and guild monks. Otherwise, there's not much else. Bosses do add some variety, like the evil tree monster, Annie from Evil Dead 2, possessed armor, and a bona fide Kandarian demon. Your primary weapon is the chainsaw, which can be turned on and off using the left trigger. Now, why would you ever turn it off, you ask? Because this piece of shit runs on gas. It burns through petrol in mere seconds, and honestly, I question whether it actually does more damage. I feel it takes just as many swipes to kill these things either way, so what's the fucking point then? The only benefit I see is when Ash delivers the coup de grace. I'll admit it. That is awesome. It doesn't make much sense though. It's a chainsaw, not a drill. Why the fuck is he spinning like a goddamn top? Your secondary attack can be selected in the item menu. You get an axe, a pistol, the boomstick, or a rifle. The axe is no more effective than the chainsaw, but the attack is more immediate, making it an effective backup. The guns are more powerful, obviously, though ammo is scarce and aiming is really awkward. It's not City of Angels bad, no, you can adjust to it, though it takes a lot of patience. A lot of patience. From what I've read, if you tap the taunt button, yes, it has a taunt button.
Come get some.
Deadites may or may not die faster, or run away, or leave you more items. This is where the game really deviates from the Resident Evil formula. Whenever you kill an enemy, they'll leave something behind. It's usually health, but they may drop some petrol or ammunition. You'd think that would make for an easier game, right? No, it doesn't. Engaging the enemy just sucks. The first issue I have is the animation. It's so choppy, makes me feel as if I'm fighting an animatronic monster. Then we have the hit detection. It may look as if I'm facing the creature, though I often miss for whatever fuck reason. It's especially bad whenever I use a gun. I mean, just look at this shit. Like I said, I managed to wrap my head around its quirky mechanics, though it didn't help much since enemies respawn endlessly. That's not an exaggeration. One will pop up right after. Right the fuck after. Oftentimes you'll be laying the smackdown on some hellbeast when a friend randomly appears and takes you from behind. Ooh, wait. In Resident Evil, once you've cleared a room, enemies won't return unless the plot demands it. With Hail to the King, it rarely lets up. If supplies were more plentiful, I'd be set for non-stop action. That is not the case here. To make fighting even more frustrating is that enemies will often run away after a few hits. The torsos are the worst because they'll dive into a flaming asshole and vanish, then randomly reappear someplace else. I'm like, what the fuck? The skeletons are really annoying. One good thwack and they run off like Winnie the Pooh chasing a butterfly. Believe it or not, the bosses are too easy. Attack patterns are almost Atari-like in their simplicity. A few of them can be vanquished without taking any damage whatsoever. The only boss that had me sweating was Annie. She's more aggressive, more agile, and if that weren't bad enough, the she-bitch can regenerate. Since enemies respawn, backtracking is way more aggravating than usual. The first major puzzle had me running around this fucking maze for an hour and a half looking for a fucking ripcord. I checked the work shed, the cabin, my delta, the bridge, that campsite, and nothing. Just nothing. I then got lost in this stupid maze for what felt like an eternity trying to outrun these fucking skeletons, and that's when I happened upon a lawnmower with a ripcord. Finally! If you're expecting a series of challenging brain teasers, you can forget it. The puzzles are no more complex than finding a key or a wrench, fucking weed killer. It's just lazy. With Resident Evil, puzzles were varied and spread out. Some were lethal even. With Hail to the King, you're just going through the motions. Also, the game does a poor job explaining how things work. For example, mushrooms appear randomly throughout the game. You pick them up but can't use them. I figured they were the Evil Dead equivalent of herbs, though I couldn't combine them with anything. It wasn't until much later when I found some documents telling me, Ash, how the whole thing works. And how does it work? You simply combine the mushroom with the science project. Yeah, the same fucking thing I was doing before. I guess in the game world, Ash himself needed to know the right mixture, but give me a break. It's not like the Alpha team needed a fucking pamphlet on herb mixing, did they? You know what they should have explained? The save function. Ash will find these quarter-inch tapes meant to save your progress. Since they're tapes, I thought I had to use that tape recorder back in the cabin, but no! How do you save your game? You gotta use the item chests. It makes sense, I guess, though I never accumulated enough items to warrant a search, so I never knew that option was even there. To be fair, I grew accustomed to the clunky layout, making it as far as the final boss, so the game isn't that hard. Though I can't say I enjoyed myself. If it weren't for the license, I would have given up after 15 minutes and called it a dead fuck. What kills me is that there are good elements here. The backgrounds are beautifully rendered. The long shadows and billowing drapes in the cabin, the living fog within the wood. Complementing these visuals, we have solid sound design, that eerie wind, distant howls. It all works together so well.
It's a trick. Get an axe.
Hail to the King is the very definition of a mixed bag. The presentation's nice, and I really think the developers were on the right track, but the wonky controls and dodgy fight mechanics made an otherwise decent game woefully below average. It could have, and should have, been so much more. No, I've had enough! I've had enough!
Well, that's how you want to play? Hey, I can play too!